Alright, so this is going to be my first time doing a cooking video, and also I've never tried chuck steak before. It looks similar to a top round, so I just wanted to experiment and see how it goes. I'm going to show you guys my secret recipe, how to make Jerbear steak. So the basic ingredients I use, like for cooking oil, I use extra virgin olive oil. This one's fancy, it was shipped from Portugal. Then I got chopped up fresh garlic cloves. I got butter. One of my favorites, Tony's Creole seasoning, a little spicy. Got garlic powder, onion powder, salt, pepper, paprika, cayenne pepper, and then of course one of the secrets to this that Gordon Ramsay uses too. You cook with some fresh thyme. That gives it a nice little flavor. Alright, so I'm going to get everything prepared and then continue this. Alright, so here's what the steak looks like out of the package. Pretty big steak. I'm excited about this. So now I'm going to generously season it on both sides with all these seasonings, minus the thyme and the garlic cloves. That's what I'm cooking with. But as far as the seasonings, they're all going to go on both sides of the steak. And then I'm going to gently massage the seasonings into the steak. So once the seasoning's done, your steak should look like this on both sides, like it got hit with a snowstorm of seasoning. And now, once again, I'm going to pause the video again to massage the seasoning into the steak to make it nice and tender, help it warm up to room temperature, and then I'm going to preheat the pan from there. So from here, you're going to put the flame on its hottest setting, and I put a nice amount of the extra virgin olive oil for the steak to essentially like boil in. It helps with a nice sear, get a good crispy sear on both sides. Once it gets hot enough, that's when I first apply the raw garlic cloves. Let them sear first. You hear a nice little sizzle. I'll continue to just let it heat up a little more before the next step is actually applying the steak itself. So now the pan seems nice and hot, so this is now my favorite part of actually applying the steak itself to the pan. Careful not to burn myself here. I'm going to use a pair of tongs here just to straighten it out a little bit. You can already hear it start to sizzle. Pan is really hot. Pan's honestly a little small for this steak, but it's okay. The steak will shrivel up as it gets hot. So I personally like my steak medium rare. So I typically, depend on the thickness of the steak, you'll usually sear it on both sides between 4 and 5 minutes. This steak's a little thin, so I'm going to start off around 4 minutes. It should be good, and I'll see where it goes from there. Next, while it's cooking on the first side, is when I like to apply the thyme. So the thyme's also going to make a crackling noise, kind of like firecrackers when you apply it to the pan. Sometimes it takes a minute for that to kick in once the hot oils hit it. Alright, put it on either side of the steak so both sides get a nice flavor to them, and now I'm just going to let it sit for the next 4 minutes. So it's been so it's been just about 4 minutes. So this is where I have to gently try to flip the steak over onto its other side to sear the other side now. There you go. Nice, crisp. See that? Nice and seared. Now you want to do the same thing to the other side of the steak. Also, at this stage is where you're going to want to apply a couple nice sized scoops of butter, because that's what you're going to use to baste the steak. Sorry, it's a little smoky from the oil, so it's making me cough. There's the butter. Now, while the butter's melting, the other side of the steak is also searing. And once the butter's completely melted is when I'm going to use that same tablespoon to start basting the melted butter and oil onto the steak. So as you can see, the butter's starting to melt. I'm just going to start scooping it, drizzling it on top of the steak. It helps when I don't have a phone in my hand, because I usually tilt the pan, which I'm going to do in a second. I'm going to pause the video so I can do this the proper way. You want to tilt the pan so you can get as much of that oil and butter into the spoon, basted on top. And then again, after it's been about 4 or 5 minutes, you flip the steak one more time, let it sit for about another minute, and that'll be done. So now, it's been just about 4 minutes. You can see the blood and juices from the steak start to seep up toward the top. This is at this point where I'm going to flip it one final time. Ooh, yeah. My favorite sound. I like to let the thyme and garlic cloves just sit on top at this point. Get that final little flavor. Turn down the flame a little bit, down to medium low. Let it sit for another minute, and then it'll be done cooking from there. So at this point, in my opinion, because the way I like the steak, it's considered done for me. So I'm going to remove it onto the pan. And I like to pour all the leftover juices and remnants from the pan onto the steak. And at this point, you're going to let the steak rest for about 8 to 10 minutes to finish cooking on the inside, and also just to settle all the juices on the inside so it's got a nice flavor and you're not scorching your mouth when you bite into the steak. And it'll also taste its best at this point when it's settled a little bit. So that's what I'm going to let it do now. So it's been just around 9 minutes. Steak's well rested, as you can see. Most of the time I discard it because once it's done resting, I don't like it to really get in the way, so I toss it. I do leave the garlic cloves behind because I just enjoy eating fried garlic cloves and it's a nice flavor. I cut into the steak, as you can see. It's crispy, dark brown color on the outside. Nice pinkish red on the inside. That's how I like my steak. To me, this is my perfect version of a medium rare steak. Now I'm gonna try it. That's some good steak. As Gordon Ramsay would say, it's fucking delicious. And that concludes my cooking instructions on how to make a Jerbear steak. Alright.